show where AI takes the floor. Leah Rich on the mic, ready to explore.
Welcome to the AI Guys. My name is Rich Swier. I'm joined by Thomas Hall, our head of product here at Raia. And today we're going to do a deep dive into one of the more popular use cases, integrating Raia with n8n and Jira to help dev teams basically expand their tickets, leveraging an AI agent.
Thank you. Yeah, I know this is one of our first builds, so I kind of wanted to shoot for a middle of the line. We might be doing builds in the future where it's really just living in Launchpad, and we can do a lot of our functionality there because we're sending ourselves an email after a certain trigger, or there might be some really intense workflows that maybe even need multiple videos because of everything that goes into it. But this is a nice middle of the road problem that we run into as well.
Absolutely.
So for anybody out there who has a team that works in Jira issues, there might be the team or certain people who leave you something like this, where you get your issue card and you get a title and nothing else. Maybe the description they assume is, you can figure it out from the title, or they can't get to it right now because they got pulled into something else. Meanwhile, you have a developer who's sitting on his hands, so he could be working on it. Meanwhile, anybody who has a pretty good idea of the understanding of the website's skills, functions, overall apps would be able to flesh it out to an extent. So what I want to do is build an agent trained on the same documents as our support agent without having to deal with so we don't have to deal with any new retraining or dealing with any new documents, and can create a nice description and add it right into the Jira issue for me so I don't have to think about it. So we have our card. The first thing we're going to do is make our Raia agent. The nice thing is we aren't going to have to put a lot into it. It's going to need instructions, a couple settings, and then a borrowed vector store. So we'll go to create agent. This is just going to be a task agent. It's doing a one and done task many times. We'll just call it Jira Expander for now. Fill in our required fields. We'll do the instructions in the next step just to keep this moving. We don't need to worry about any policy packs because, again, this is very internal. Nobody outside is going to be communicating with this. And we'll enable the API skill because we will need that to talk to the agent from our workflow in the future. And we're done. Our agent is here. It doesn't know much, but it's here. So next, we're going to head into train. And I already have some instructions pre-generated here. And this is something you'll most likely iterate through. So you'll be able to always go back in version control as you're testing the different descriptions that are being generated. But it's very straightforward. It's, you're a products requirement writer. You're going to get a Jira title. You're going to expand. This is how our team likes it. So output it in that format. It's going to just output a big block of text, because that's all I need. If I wanted very hyper-specific formatting, I would look at adding in a JSON schema and then parsing out those values to put in with the right header columns, because maybe a team is very particular, but we don't need that for this. From here, we'll go ahead and click Save. Okay, now we'll go over to Advanced Settings. We now offer 5.4, so I'm going to go with that because I want the latest and greatest. And I do want a pretty solid amount of reasoning because this involves analysis. Nothing crazy, but I do want it to do some thinking and considering about the best option. We're going to use file search because the vector store I'm going to be using has a lot of source files, so I might need it to pull from different sources, but I don't want it to have so much that it's just going to anything within reach, grab, and then propose as pertinent data, because it won't be. So we're going to apply those changes. And then the last thing is, we recently added the feature to share a custom vector store ID. So we already have our Raia support agent who's trained on all of our functions, all of our skills, all of our docs.raia.com site. So it's got all of that already. So I want to use that vector store because that's going to be all the information I would need to flesh this out. So I pop in, override the vector store, and now I don't need to worry about anything. Actually, if I go to documents, I can't even upload, or I can, but they're not going to be used. So that's something to think about down the road. All right, so this agent is done. So now let's hop over to n8n. So we're just going to do a manual click to execute for now. But one other thing I forgot to mention, to make this work, I want it to grab a file, and the Jira API is a little finicky with looking at where a description is, and it breaks up all of the text elements and it can get kind of confusing. So rather than try to analyze whether a description's already been generated, instead I just added a date field called AI expanded on. So this way, if there's a date there, I know that the AI expanded on it, and that's the date that it did that. So if you wanted to, you could make changes to this, go in and clear that date, and it'll grab it and rerun it. That could be a fun way to iterate through some iterations. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add in an HTTP request node to grab my issues that are pending. The thing that eats up the most time, honestly, is dealing with these APIs, especially the ones, this one, for example, wants a request body because I'm doing a post to the Atlassian JQL search. And sometimes with some of these, they can be very, very finicky. So I went ahead and made this ahead of time so that we don't have to spend 20 minutes watching me stumble through this and ask AI how it works. But we're going to be targeting my project, and we're going to be looking for where the AI expanded on is empty. And I have it set up to just grab one result at a time. And what I would probably do is set this up on a cron to run every 10 minutes, a schedule node to run every 10 minutes, just grab one, run it through. 10 minutes later, if there's another one, I'll grab it. But you could expand it and set up a loop or however you want to handle it. Outside of that, I'm grabbing the new custom field, and we're off to the races. The other thing I went ahead and did ahead of time was set up the authentication, which for some apps, especially anything where there's an OAuth app you have to set up, it can be a bear and a time waster. Atlassian is nice because you can just go in to manage in the security your API tokens, create an API token, not the one with scopes. This one is nice because then it will work with your Confluence pages. It'll work with your Jira issues. Everything's great and ready to go. And it's just an API key. So then when you're setting up your auth, you just drop in the email address of the person who created the API key and the API key. And we can go ahead and execute that node. And I've got my ticket. I've got my issue. There's only one in there. I only have one issue. Perfect. So the next one I'm going to drop in is just a pretty straightforward, simple code node. A lot of times the APIs will give you an array of issues in this instance. Because there's the opportunity for there to be more than one, whether I'm doing just one off like this, or whether I'm doing a loop and I'm dealing with all 25 or however it might be in the pagination. I like to separate them out into their individual objects and individual items. So I have a little node that does that and separates it out. The next one I'm going to drop in is really just a nice little loop hitting our prompt API. So with our agents, there's really three main ways to talk with them, to interact with them. One is hitting our conversation / /start endpoint. That's really great if you're saying, I have a CSV full of old sales leads, and I want you to reach out to them with this message. Great. You send us an email or SMS or phone number, send us the messaging, some other details about the person, and then we'll send off a message. We'll handle all of the back and forth, and then at the end of the conversation, you'll get a text or an email or a webhook, whatever you set up in the skill. We'll let you know when the conversation's over. We'll score it. We'll do all that for you. Another use case is you want to almost maybe build your own chat. You want to handle the whole conversation, but you want us to manage it. So you get or create a user. You get or create the current conversation. You add a message and then wait for a response, and then add a message, wait for a response. So we're still dealing with all of the objects, but you're sending them and managing the whole process. That's if you want to, again, a lot of that use case is building your own chat bot if you don't want to use ours. For this use case, we're doing what we call just the prompt API, which is, this is a task. I'm going to send it a message and I want the response. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. So we don't need to store all of that context because there's not a reply that needs to know what was said before that. So how that works is we go into our prompts async and we send a message. So this is where we do need an agent secret key. That's our agent's API key. So I'm going to go into our API skill and create a key. Jira n8n. And we're going to set that to a year. You could do a custom to do multiple years, whatever you'd like. Create key. Okay, so now I throw that in here. And down below, there's just one input. It's just prompt. And I'm sending the string, here is the Jira title card to create a description so far. And I'm passing the summary field, that's what the card title object is called, or the value is called in Jira. Okay, then you're going to wait 3 seconds. I put 3 seconds because, again, this doesn't need to be immediate. It could be 10 seconds. Why we're doing this here is previously in legacy code, we do still have synchronous API calls where you make the call and then you wait for the response to come back. But with the reasoning models they have out nowadays, and with the ability to dig deep into vector stores, and really a combination of the two, where a reasoning might fire off and say, I need to dig for articles, and then it brings back, and then it thinks some more and says, actually, maybe I should dig some more. Some of these processes, depending on how intensive an analysis and how much material you're working with, could last for 5-10 minutes. It wouldn't be insane. So a lot of modern servers have timeouts after 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So the best way to approach that is with just asynchronous calls. So we have wait 3 minutes, and then we have another call here for the prompts to check the status of that. And we also need to add our API key in there for that as well. Okay, and then depending on the response, we're looking at some statuses. It might be completed. If so, we'll continue on the process. It might still be pending, in which case, if it is pending, we just jump right back and wait another 3 seconds and check until it is. If it's failed, I'll go back and retry to post to an agent. Very rarely, there could be some sort of server timeout issue. Okay, and then the very last thing we'll do, and again, I filled this out ahead of time because this is one of those nodes, is update on existing issue. So I will do a put to the issue endpoint for the object key, so for the issue, and pass the very specific formatting it requires and send in the entire response. And then I'm also going to update my custom field to now, so I know that I don't need to grab that on the next run. So let's see if this all fires off correctly. We'll see it enter here, and it should do a few loops. There's one. While that's running, because it might take a few seconds, any questions, any comments about the flow?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it shows a great example of when you think about, integrating with any third-party app, right? What we're basically doing is we're saying, whether we're grabbing something from that app and we're creating derivative data, or we're updating it, summarizing it, expanding on it, or whether it's coming from another prompt or some other interface. I think it showcases kind of the common, what I would call agentic workflow, where you're basically interjecting an agent who can take a subjective look at whatever the input is, process it through a model and the agent's training that obviously is hosted on the Raia side. And then once it's done looking at a document or looking at a ticket or whatever it might be, providing a much more robust or more specialized output. I mean, this is like kind of agent 101 type stuff, but I think it's important for people to see kind of how all the pieces work together, right? And the division between where agents are managed within Raia, where there's a workflow engine that allows the agent to easily submit information and get it back, right? Through different steps, which of course could have been much more complicated than this, right? This is just an example. So no, I mean, I think probably 80% of the stuff we do is very similar to this, right? It's input, one or more agents doing some sort of output, and then send it right back to where it came from, or send it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, with these agent builds, it is almost, I mean, it is software development too. And the idea that this is a great way, and I can see it finished running, 23 runs. So yeah, 3 seconds of wait in between. It took over a minute to produce. But now I can go back into my ticket and let me refresh. So collapse it. And I have my description now, a summary, the problems, opportunities, the current states, and my AI expanded on is there. Proposed changes, scope, all of this filled out. And with this process, it's built out, but now just like software, it's the iteration. It's, I need to change the instructions. Or, who has really great documentation is Jim. Let me set up an ETL so I can, or a one-time pool of all of Jim's tickets, grab all those descriptions, create training or derivative training from those, and tell it to make them just like Jim. So there's so many ways you could start to add on to it, or, do this and also fill out an additional value. Maybe there's a categorization of which product this is for that they forgot to fill out. But judging by the title and what you're able to generate from your description, you might be able to infer which product, and you can apply that right value to it, or leave the comment. That there's so many ways you can then continue to add on and make additional workflows or expand on the existing workflow to add more functionality and more cool features.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why we're doing, this, this kind of format where we're showing people how to use our platform and integrate with the n8n products, is because we get once people start building out their agents, right, their agentic workforce, and they start training their agents, the next obvious step is, okay, how can I put this into my ecosystem? How can I get it working and give it agency, right? So, and obviously any software company that's dealing with Jira or any application for that matter, but specifically for what you showed today, is dealing with this problem of, okay, we have these tickets, we need to expand them, we need to make sure that they're well documented. And especially if your agent's trained on, a much larger base of knowledge, it can actually interject and intersect into that prompt, a lot of other cool stuff, right? So you could have easily said, hey, look, do this and look for past tickets, or look for this that might be related. There's a lot of things you can have AI do within that workflow.
Yeah. And so much of this workflow is built, especially, with a pretty solid, understanding. It doesn't have to be wild of programming. With tools like n8n, you can build out some pretty wild workflows. And the nice thing is that's the development team working on that. But I mean, really, of the 5 or 10 minutes it took to build this, probably about a minute of it was spinning up an entire agent and using another agent's vector store. So that's also not something that the tech team even has to worry about, or the dev team. They could be having whoever's using Launchpad and uploading documents, and then all they need to say is, hey, give me the API key, and then they can be off and running. So you can have 2 people attacking the same problem and get it done twice as fast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point to be made. Like, building the agents typically requires much more domain expertise, or understanding the business process, understanding what your goal is, right? So it could be a product manager, it could be QA person, it could be somebody in your support team that's really driving the development of the agent and testing it, right, through our tools like Copilot. And then when and if you're ready to do the integration, you can bring in somebody who's a little bit more familiar with the technology, than maybe a developer, or maybe somebody who's an integration specialist. And I think that's exactly kind of the whole point of Raia, is that not put the whole onus on your development team, right? And have everything in the queue waiting to get done. You can actually do a lot of the heavy lifting, as you showcased here. And quite honestly, even using AI to generate the n8n workflows is getting better and better every day, right? So there's probably at some point where, especially for a lot of these simpler workflows, that AI can actually help you generate the n8n JSON that you can import in as the workflow. And, there's a little bit of nuance of connecting it to these third-party apps, but it doesn't take much to, read a couple documents, how-tos, and I'm sure it's going to get easier and easier and easier with things like MCP and other things kind of catching on fire. So very cool demo. I think this is a great example of, how you can interject an agent into your workforce autonomously, and which zero adoption risk. You just implement it, plug it in, and then you've got Jira on steroids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, this was just kind of the first idea that came to mind, because again, I think we're probably in a similar situation where we're currently having someone expand on it, on our descriptions, but why not have AI take a stab at it as well? So yeah, any suggestions about future builds or anything, absolutely throw them out there. Whether how involved that is or not, whether that's setting up an ETL from a common CRM, writing something, or even, so you said, something as simple as even just hitting a webhook based on an action that's taken in a conversation in live chat. You kind of have to really understand some of the Raia to understand the possibility of what their things are. But again, I'll try to continue to put together cool demos to showcase not only new features and functionality, but also multiple features and functionality in one workflow that's still put together in just a handful of minutes.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it, man. That is it.